Hello and welcome to People and Profit, the show where we look at how business shapes our world. I'm Marcus Carlson. Coming up, HSBC outlines plans to shed 50,000 jobs. 7 years after the financial crisis, will the banking industry keep bleeding jobs? Is the global economy heading for a rate tantrum? We'll tell you how an interest rate rise in the United States could impact people across the world. Plus, they're the madmen of the 21st century. We'll look at the digital future of advertising. First up, though, the UK-based bank HSBC has outlined plans to downsize its operations and cut nearly 25,000 jobs in the process. Another 25,000 jobs will go when HSBC sells its Brazilian and Turkish operations. The aim of this radical overhaul is to throttle back spending. Like many other lenders in the wake of the financial crisis, Europe's biggest bank has been under pressure to slash costs. Claire Murphy has more.
Another wave of unsettling news is being digested by staff at HSBC. Here in Britain, at least 8,000 workers will go in the bank's latest restructuring. That's 1/3 of an estimated 25,000 jobs worldwide. The familiar retail logo is also set to disappear, the rebranding just one outworking of new British laws, bringing banks to heel over their investment activities. While the bank is still reeling from stiff fines following a slew of financial scandals, including tax evasion schemes for clients.
The problem with HSBC is not that the operations are not sound, it's just that they face a hostile regulatory environment. The authorities in the US and UK just want their pound of flesh.
This is the second major cost-cutting plan introduced by CEO Stuart Gulliver since he took up the role in 2011, and the first had only limited success. HSBC has already begun disposing of Brazilian and Turkish operations. Even its head office in London could go.
Clearly, the cost of doing business in the UK is increased significantly. They pay north of 700 million towards the bank levy, and no doubt as part of those options are looking at relocating its headquarters back to its original territories in Asia.
Confirmation of any move to Hong Kong is expected to be announced by the end of this year. But that aside, HSBC says it nevertheless plans to grow its investments in China significantly.
Now, these are just the latest in a series of major cutbacks since the banking crisis began. And Kate Moody is here now to tell us more about that. Kate.
Marcus, this is the emblematic moment when it all began. Back in September 2008, Lehman Brothers employees exiting their offices en masse as their bank collapsed. Now, since then, no lender has escaped unscathed. All have been forced to cut jobs as they try to restructure their operations. Last year alone, Western banks slashed a total 59,000 jobs. About 21,000 of those were from Europe's 18 biggest banks. The rest were from 6 major American lenders. Now, that's still fewer cuts than in 2013. Overall, European banks have shed just over 4% of their staff in the past 2 years, while American banks have slimmed their workforce by 7%. Nearly 7 years on from Lehman, banks are still facing pressure to downsize. Along with HSBC, RBS and Barclays are among the lenders that have already announced thousands of job cuts this year. Even though many of the lenders are now turning a profit, still more layoffs are expected throughout 2015. Both the American JP Morgan and German Deutsche Bank are said to be planning to axe thousands of jobs each in the months to come.
Next, we are going to turn to the Federal Reserve in the United States, America's central bank. It's on the verge of raising interest rates after years of keeping them at record lows. The expectation of a rate rise has already made global financial markets wobble, and when it does happen, it's likely to impact economies and people around the globe. It set the stage for an almost unprecedented step by the International Monetary Fund. The fund's chief recently told the Fed and its chairman, Janet Yellen, they should wait until next year to raise rates.
Higher US policy rates could still result in significant market volatility with financial stability consequences that go well beyond the US borders. In weighing these risks, we think that there is a case for waiting to raise rates until there are more tangible signs of wage or price inflation than are currently evident.
Let's get more now on what we can expect from the Fed and Janet Yellen. We can turn to Sarah Johnson, who's a Senior Research Director at the research firm IHS. So welcome to the program, first of all.
Thank you.
Now, we have seen record low interest rates since 2008, really, and we have a graph that really tells the story. The Fed funds rate, as it's known, has been basically close to the flat line since 2008. What does it mean for the US economy now that the Fed is eyeing an interest rate hike?
I think it reflects some confidence that the recovery is underway. It will proceed at a moderate pace. Labor markets are tightening, and it's time to normalize policy.
In what way could a rate hike in the United States shape the rest of the global economy? Why should the rest of the world, so to speak, be looking to the Federal Reserve for direction?
Well, the Federal Reserve is likely to be the first major central bank to start the tightening process. That will mean that interest rates in the U.S. will be rising more quickly. Investment in U.S. bonds may become more attractive. And as a result, we might see capital flowing to the United States.
So basically, investors will move their money out of other markets and back to the United States?
Yes, that's a possibility. And perhaps for the Eurozone, we might see some modest weakening of the euro. Our forecast has the euro going down to $1.07 by October.
A few years back, when the Federal Reserve started tapering its quantitative easing program or its monetary stimulus program, we saw something that was called back then a taper tantrum, when basically emerging markets in particular were hard hit. Do you think we're going to see something similar this time around? Are we going to see a new taper tantrum?
I don't expect anything that disruptive, but in the past month we have seen more volatility in bond and equity prices. Certainly for some of the emerging markets that are struggling, capital flight is a concern. I'd put Brazil, Turkey, perhaps Indonesia and India on that list.
Now, not long ago, we saw the International Monetary Fund take a basically unprecedented step. We heard from Christine Lagarde that she believes that the Fed should wait until the beginning of 2016 to raise interest rates. Were you surprised by that the IMF is stepping in such an active way?
Yes, I was a little surprised. I think given the timing, the Greek situation unresolved, that she is advocating for caution. But on the other hand, I think the members of the Open Market Committee in the U.S. are eager to start the process of normalizing. They realize that there will be some volatility in financial markets when they take the first step. But hopefully once that first step is over, markets will settle down and be prepared for what comes next.
Okay, they're eager to get the ball rolling, so to speak.
Exactly.
Sarah Johnson from IHS, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for coming into our studio.
My pleasure.
Next, we're looking at the changing face of advertising. Billboards and newspaper ads are not about to go away, but they're not seeing the same growth as digital advertising. Global revenues for ads online went above $50 billion last year, according to the Pew Research Center in the United States. The ad tech industry in particular is cashing in on that growth. To find out more about that market, I spoke to the president of the New York-based firm AppNexus, and I started by asking him what ad tech actually is.
Well, a lot of people, including consumers, don't realize that actually when you go to a web page or you go to an app, generally speaking, the ads and the content come from different places. The content is loaded from the publisher's content management system. The ads are generally loaded from an ad tech system into those empty spaces, which are effectively the ad slots on the page. The ad tech industry has evolved to help buyers and sellers of digital advertising make smart decisions about which messages they're going to show to consumers in real time.
How is your sector growing? We know that there is significant growth in the ad tech sector, but what kind of growth are you looking at ahead? And will all advertising eventually be online?
Well, I think a very large proportion of advertising will be digital advertising. And despite the enormous growth in online advertising over the last 15, 20 years, in mobile advertising, in search advertising, it still actually is a minority of the advertising that consumers see overall. Print advertising, television advertising, radio advertising.
What's the ratio?
I think in most Western nations, the proportion of digital advertising is around 30, 40%. Also, I think in a lot of ways, the trend is being driven by consumers. Consumers are adopting digital media at record paces, right? They're using their mobile phones, they're using their tablets and PCs to access media that in the past they might have accessed in other ways.
What does that mean for regular consumers? Does that mean that advertisers, for instance, will know more and more about us?
I think it means that consumers can expect to see more targeted advertising, more ads that are relevant to them, whether that's because an advertiser or publisher actually has something that they know about the consumer, or whether the ads can be changed on the fly, in accordance with what the advertiser is finding, what's working and creating, real value for their campaign. In worlds of newspaper or radio, for example, you'd have a change cycle of weeks to months to really alter a campaign. In the world of digital advertising, changes can be made and updated in hours. And that's a huge benefit in this always-on digital world where consumers are buying more and more stuff through their devices.
The president of AppNexus speaking there. And with that, we're going to be wrapping up this edition of People and Profit. If you want to get in touch, go to our Facebook page, France 24 Business. You can also tweet me on @MarcusF24. Thank you for watching.